All right, the latest now coming in from Lutuli House. Well, ANC Secretary General has apparently suspended Party President Cyril Rampaphosa, and this is after he himself, Magashule, was suspended. So let's get some clarity on our top story this morning with ANC Spokesperson, Mr. Pule Mabe. Mr. Mabe, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. First of all, that clarity being that ANC Magashule has suspended Party President Cyril Rampaphosa. Is the ANC President suspended?
Well, good morning and morning to your viewers. Well, the President of the African National Congress is not suspended. The African National Congress did issue a statement yesterday responding to the statement by the Secretary General on the letter that did have written to the President of the African National Congress. And we did emphasize in that very statement that decisions of the National Executive Committee and the National Working Committee do stand. We had said that the NEC coming up this weekend will be able to effectively respond to the letter by the Secretary General. We further called on the Secretary General to respect decisions of the National Executive Committee and subject himself to the overall unity and discipline of the African National Congress.
With that being said, Mr. Mabe, we've read from the SG also saying that he plans to, if he has not already, appeal what he calls is an unconstitutional suspension. First of all, can he appeal? And if he can, what are some of the internal processes that he would have to follow?
Well, of course, we will hear when we get into the National Executive Committee this coming weekend. I wouldn't want to preempt what the SG would have done. We'll hear when we get a report from the Secretary General's office on what all those impacted upon by the decision to step aside shall have done. Remember that in the National Executive Committee meeting that we held on the 26th to the 29th of March, we then agreed on a 30-day period through which the Secretary General's office, working together with provinces, shall begin a process to compile names of those of our cadres who will be impacted upon by the decision, so that well within 30 days, they voluntarily step aside. If they have not done so within 30 days and they fall well within that category, we'll then invoke Rule 25.70 of the ANC Constitution, which rule then allows for the NEC to carry out temporary suspension of such members. What then happened in the intervening period, within that 30-day period, was that a team led by our Treasurer General, Comrade Paul Mashatile, would then have dealt with conditionalities, terms and conditions. What happens when these cadres are either on temporary suspension or have stepped aside, having to deal with whatever cases that are before the courts which they have to attend to. And then those conditions include the following: that they can report to their relevant secretariat monthly to just update on matters that are before the courts, and that the cases, individual cases, would then be reviewed every 6 months. As it relates to matters of appeals, we had also agreed in the National Working Committee that we'll have to then set up an appeal process of those cadres who might want to appeal reports of the Integrity Commission. So names have been recommended. These names would be carried forward to the National Executive Committee, which shall then have to make finality on those.
Right. Mr. Mabe, I had a conversation earlier on with the ANC Veterans President, that's Mr. Zigalala, and just on the point of, Mr. Magashule then releasing that letter saying that he suspends ANC President Ramaphosa, Mr. Zigalala said that it cannot be. There's absolutely no power that the SG would have to take that decision. Can you confirm, first of all, that that letter was indeed sent, that letter of suspension was indeed sent to the ANC President?
Well, the letter was indeed sent. Well, of course, I'm not commenting on what the President of the Veterans League would have said. I speak on behalf of the National Executive Committee. The Veterans League is one of the leagues of the ANC, so that we understand what we are doing here. So, of course, the SG had written that letter. He had confirmed the same to us as well. I had spoken to both the SG and the DSG, confirming the same, because at the time one would have thought that there could have been some fake letter doing rounds out there. Then it was confirmed as having been sent by the Secretary General, which then prompted the African National Congress to issue the statement that we issued, whose contents are just relayed to your viewers.
Right. So does the Secretary General have the power to issue such a letter, a suspension letter to the ANC President?
Well, under the conditions and given the situation that the SG finds himself in, it is really an anomaly. It would not be possible from that kind of an instance, because it meant that when we rose from our National Working Committee on Wednesday and directing the SGO to write letters to those of our cadres who are impacted upon by the step-aside resolution.
Right.
Remember, the step-aside resolution is quite clear on who should be asked to step aside or who should voluntarily step aside. It should be those of our cadres who are indicted in a court of law. As matters stand, the president of the ANC is not indicted in any court of law and is not criminally charged.
With that being said, then, what would then be the processes? Perhaps you can give us some context. The processes for an ANC president to be suspended, or who then has that power? Just for context, please.
Well, the National Executive Committee has never reflected on the suspension of its president. The Secretary General of the ANC cannot unilaterally act on his own and take that kind of a decision. It would have been a decision taken and processed by the organization. In all of the reports that we've received in the National Executive Committee and in the National Working Committee, there has never been any indication that the president would then fall well within the category of those cadres who will have to be asked to step aside or who would have to be temporarily suspended. Of course, where there were issues, the president would also have appeared before the Integrity Commission and provided the necessary clarity. The Integrity Commission has given its report to the National Executive Committee on the interaction that it shall have had with the president. Actually, the NEC that is sitting over this coming weekend is expected to make finality on all of those reports by the Integrity Commission.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
What the point I'm trying to make here is that there is no member of the ANC who is beyond the discipline of the African National Congress. Even the president, if there are matters that he needs to clarify to the Integrity Commission, he does so. In the same way that when he was asked to come before the Zondo Commission as president of the African National Congress, he did so. He went there and represented the party before the Zondo Commission. So all of us in the African National Conference hold equal to the decorum of the organization and understand the oath of membership that we took when we voluntarily joined this organization.
We'll leave it there, Mr. Mabe. Thank you so much for your time this morning. ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe joining us there via Zoom.